Welcome to No More Crazy Days, our summit with 5 wonderful speakers. And today I am welcoming Natalie Forest. Natalie Forest, as soon as I bring up her intro here, is the CEO of her own company, an international executive consultant, a transformational business and life coach, a keynote speaker, an international best-selling author, and mentor. Whew. Natalie.
Oh, that was a mouthful.
Yeah, it was. Natalie, America's leading expert in personal performance, is founder of Success Revolutions and Revolutionize Your Potential, a series of educational trainings for individuals and corporations across the globe. Natalie's passion for progress, positive progress in the world, is evident in her role as executive director for the Women of Global Change, a premier humanitarian organization. So you use the word revolutionize a lot, Natalie. Welcome to the summit, and tell us what you mean by revolutionize your day.
Well, first of all, thank you, Beth. And yeah, I talk a lot about revolutionizing, something that actually I didn't come up with. And I want to thank you especially because I think the summit that you're doing is also revolutionary. And I'm going to use that as my intro to what I mean. There are certain ways in which everybody does things. It's the norm, it's the standard, we've gotten used to it. So in this instance, we've gotten used to a summit having 20, 30, 40 speakers from 8 to 5 p.m., 5 days a week. And that's a lot of information. Hardly anybody can take that much in. And I'm thinking there's also a marketing eye on that. But what you're doing in that sense is you're giving one person time to listen, to take it in. And that is very revolutionary in the world that we live in today. And that is, in a nutshell, what I mean. It is when we do things our own way. And if you were to look up the term revolution, revolutionary, it's really much more about changing the status quo. It doesn't always mean bloody, it doesn't mean violent. It can be an internal revolution, the glorious revolution of England or the spiritual revolution. They're sometimes just in the mind. And I think that's exactly when somebody suggested that term to me. There are some things that I do that are way out the ordinary. And then there are just some things that I do my way because I have learned that they work for me and for my clients.
Beautiful. So what in your life kind of influenced you to come to this revolution? And I want to hear lots more about it. If we can.
Well, I don't believe in circumstances, so let's just say a fortunate event of activities. It really has begun with me, I think, leaving my home, which was Germany, and just getting out on my own. I come from a very close-knit family, my mom, my brother, and I. And leaving that physically behind, never leaving it behind emotionally, because we're still very tight, even though we're scattered around the world. But then doing things my way for a little bit while I was a student. I then sort of got sucked into, the social norms. So I got married and did all that. And then I woke up one morning and was like, excuse my grammatically incorrect language, but this ain't working. And when I was like that, I started making small changes. And these small changes were really internal, and then they began to manifest themselves externally. So much so that the biggest revolution was probably that I left my then husband in a country that is not my home country, with no family around. I just packed up my cats, the car, and left. And everything worked out perfectly. So that revolution came from the heart, and it emphasized my alignment with what I needed to do. And they were crazy in one way, if you look at it from the outside, but make perfect sense on my end, the way that I had to go. So a revolution internally, and for others, probably a revolutionary moment from the outside, just watching it.
Okay, beautiful. So the folks that are watching us, generally speaking, are people who may love their work, but just have way too much of it. They're committed to all kinds of things. They may have families, they may have volunteer efforts they're involved in, they may be working more than one job, and they've just reached the point where there's so much input and so much that they're trying to get done that it just is exhausting. And so I'd love to hear, in your doing it your way and getting aligned with what mattered to you, what shifts you made specifically that helped you have no more crazy days, besides leaving your husband, which I gather was a big one.
Well, first of all, I have my crazy days, which I love because I'm a little weird. I also have the crazy days where I still have to implement my own strategies. And I want to be honest about that, because I think living in the real world means there are still days when we all have a few challenges. Mm-hmm. So it's not like I don't have any challenges at all. I have my work, I have my mom, I have my brother in different countries, I have a young daughter, I have a husband, etc., etc. So there's still a lot going on. How I manage is by having been able to identify my own values. What matters to me? In other words, what do I want to be remembered by? Do I want to be remembered by always being on time at work, and then at home being stressed out and yelling at everybody? Or do I want to be remembered for a loving and kind personality? And the way that I did that is through a process that I call the hidden power of patterns. What are the things, so patterns, behaviors, things we keep doing, routines. What are the things that I keep doing? And beginning to analyze or at least take a look at them to say, whenever I do this, I feel a certain way. So what makes me happy? And really working on only looking at me. Mm-hmm. Everybody in the whole world will tell you what you should do and how you should do it. For example, and I love the fact that you brought up the idea of having a job. So let's say you have a job. The job might be good. In every job, there are also pressures. Mm-hmm. There are pressures that, you've been in that position for 5 years. Maybe you should apply for another job that pays better, et cetera, et cetera. And there are a lot of pressures. And we often get sucked into that. The way that I dealt with it, because I did that, and then I woke up one morning and said, this is a good paying job. I get a lot of benefits, but I'm exhausted. I'm stressed. My body was aching. So I leaned back and I said, that job, that corner office, that's not what's important to me. I don't need the status of being this title or this position. What I needed was to be able to come home and, before I got remarried, being able to greet my cats a certain way, or sitting down and having the energy to read a book or do some yoga. And so really focusing on what are my values. And you do that by identifying the obvious patterns, like how do you get up? How do you walk into the office? How do you react to somebody? And you connect them with what I call the hidden patterns, which are all in your subconscious mind. And they're a little harder to get to. They're the emotional flares. Somebody says, well, thank you, and you're ready to knock them to the floor, okay? So where's it coming from? So in that sense, at that point, you're taking responsibility for their feelings. And I've pretty much, as much as I can, stop that, because that's on your end. I'm over here, I said good morning, or I did something for you, and your response is, well, thank you. You got some problems. So I've really begun to let others be themselves and me follow my own path.
Wow, unhooking yourself from that kind of emotional reactivity it takes a lot of self-awareness and practice, I think, and it has enormous benefits. I agree with you 100% on that one. Yeah. So,
and it's just one added thing. It starts with the small things. One example that worked for me when you drive. We all drive a lot. And there are two things that happen when we drive. One is somebody cuts us off and we start using really bad language. And that means we're taking that energy in, right? Now we're aggravated. Now we're stressed. Now we're ready to use our car as a weapon and all of that. And that happens on a daily basis, of course, especially in the United States where I live here in Maryland area. I've started to say when that happens to do something very different. And it takes practice. I had to have a sticky note in my car and all of that good stuff. But I started saying, oh, I hope that person is all right. I wonder what's happening in their lives that they're so aggressive. I hope nobody gets hurt on their drive because he's weaving in and out of traffic. That allowed me, and like I said, it took some practice, but that allowed me to lean back and say, oh my gosh, that is not a good thing. Hopefully everybody's all right, versus me taking that energy in, that adrenaline flowing and all of that. So I think that's really key, but it's also the other part that I talk a lot about is autopilot. We drive. So probably most of us have been driving for a long time to, let's say, the grocery store. And every now and then we need to go to a different location. And I bet it has happened to everybody that you get in the car, you know you need to go, let's say, to the dentist. The dentist is almost in the same direction, but you need to veer left instead of right from the grocery store. And you're driving, all of a sudden, you look up, and you're in front of the grocery store. And those little things where we really need to pay attention when we're driving, which is really, really hard to do sometimes because it's become such an automatic autopilot process. And again, little sticky notes, just something to take away. Little sticky notes all over the house, all over the car, really work.
Oh, cool. Beautiful. My excuse for when I do that, when I'm going to the dentist and I end up at the grocery store, I always say, well, the horse knows the way to carry the sleigh. But it's
there you go.
Internal horse, right? And I need to get the reins back and pay a little attention to where the horse has been going.
Right. That's good. Yeah, that's true. That's true. Yeah.
So I love this idea of interrupting patterns, of noticing patterns and then interrupting them. I have found sometimes that purposely doing something different, radically different, can interrupt. Like I've been working on my eating patterns lately, and just thinking I really shouldn't eat this and I really should eat that has not resulted in any change whatsoever. But having different things in the house and working with friends to kind of set up a routine where we check in with each other, where we make certain promises about what we'll eat for 10 days, that carries over for the rest of the month. So there's an example, not really exhaustion and stress related, but certainly related to our health. Yeah.
Yeah, I think you bring up a really important point because you talk about a support system. And that is really important. I think there's a balance, first of all, between how much you want to always tell others, because that can also backfire about what you're going to do, and the words that you use when you say those things. For example, you just mentioned the word should. The word should is a word that I tell my family members and all of my clients to never, ever use. It's hard. The reason why is because it has an emotional or moral component to it. So if we say, I should do that, which is what I've found, and everybody's different, of course, then if you don't do it, you end up feeling guilty, which really makes the whole process worse, especially when we're talking about good behavior or good eating or anything like that. But the support system is crucial. And so, in your example, I love it. You have a group of friends and you support each other positively. When you're talking about making changes in your daily routine or even in your life, then you need to really find the right people to support you. Hopefully that is somebody from your... Very often it actually is not.
I'm sorry, you broke up for a second there. Hopefully that is something
before, because the people that we're living with, our family members, mom, dad, sisters, all of that good stuff, they like us, they love us, they know us the way we are. And the minute that you start making changes, you're asking them to adjust. And that can be very, very difficult for them. So I always say that number one, look at who's around you. We know they love you or they wouldn't be there. They just may not be the right support system at every step of the way. And in addition to that, usually it's helpful to have outsiders help. And I know I keep coming back to sticky notes, but even my brain works like a sticky note. So when I look at something, it's like, you mentioned with the food, it's like, let's say my husband says something, my husband uses a word, and I'm like ready to jump because it's daily life. And then it's almost like I've trained myself that a little sticky note goes up and says, whoop, hold on, your reaction, take a step back. How does he mean that word? And so, the sticky notes or the little flags, we can wave them at ourselves and we need others to wave them for us. So having agreements with friends or spouses or parents or coaches or whoever is in your support system is really, really helpful.
Beautiful. I love that you brought curiosity into that, because I do find that reactivity gets in the way of my own curiosity. And when I can say, hold it, just bring up a sticky note in my mind, I love that image, then I can access my curiosity and say, wait a minute, I don't even know what they meant. What do they mean? Yeah. Or do they mean what I think they mean?
Yeah, and in that it's really crucial that, like you used the word earlier, you said aware. We need to become aware of what we're doing. We need to pull back the lever or pull back the reins and be in control. So that, in the early stages, when in my own work, what I've done with myself and when I work with others, I make them write down their routines. So for anybody who's listening, start with something simple. What time do you get up? What's the first thing you do when you get up? What's the first thing you say to yourself when you get up? What's the second thing? Everything. I'm not just talking the big things, but what do you do first? Do you brush your teeth first or do you brush your hair first? Those are all little things that when they get disrupted from the outside can make us jumpy, because then we feel ungrounded. And we need to have a routine in the morning especially, and usually in the evening, that works for us, that sets us in a certain mode. And we cannot make that happen if we're not aware. So writing it down works. One thing that I noticed years ago that I don't do anymore is I was already stressed at work, then I was stressed from the drive. This was with my first husband. And the first thing that I did when I walked in the house was I grabbed the mail and started opening the mail. And then I said, well, why am I doing that? The mail's going to be here. I need 5 minutes to de-stress or just to breathe. And so then I made it a point of just putting the mail over there and walking away. And it won't work every single time you start a new process like that. That's why I recommend not using the word should, because then you feel guilty. But you are going to do it from time to time. We all know it takes about 90 days to create a new habit. And that doesn't mean it's completely fulfilled at that point. So start paying attention to all of your routines. Then, you might want to make a little table. What are those routines? How do you feel about them? And then, what happens if you were to change one or two of them? And just go one step at a time, because the amazing thing is that I always say it only takes one step to freedom. And that's what it is. When you take the first step and you see, wow, this works. I feel better. I'm less stressed. I'm happy. I smile more. Then all of a sudden you want to take the next step, which is really exciting.
Yes. Yeah, that's beautiful. So disrupting some of your patterns, taking one step to just change a routine to a better routine that works for you, gives you the strength and the energy to make the next change. I love it. Beautiful. Anything else that you want to add about Revolutionize Your Day before we talk about your free gift?
Well, I think revolutionizing your day is truly important. I go back to the autopilot idea. There are many things that we have instilled as a routine. They are easy for us to identify once we sit down. What you then need to do in the second step is the stuff back here,
Hmm.
which are those patterns that you're not really aware of, which is almost like the why am I doing that? And those are the things that are crucial in your success to revolutionizing your day. Because those are the ones that you may have picked up when you were a child. You were observing mom and dad, or you saw something on the playground, or you heard something on the news that your grandfather was watching. You don't even know where it came from. And I'll throw in an example, if I may, to better illustrate. For example, when I was switching from being an educator to being my own entrepreneurial business coach and do the work that I do now, for a few years, I wasn't making any money. And I was wondering why, because I had worked on my worth, on my value, and all that, so I knew the value of my work. But I always bought into when people were saying, well, I really don't have any money right now. I really cannot write. Can I just give you maybe $20 instead of $200? So I would always buy into that. And they had legitimate reasons. They had their own stories. And then one day, and I was actually in this office that I'm in right now, I was looking outside my window, and I heard something in the back of my head that my mother taught my brother and I. And what she taught us was a very, very important skill. It is the skill that we can survive on very little, which is important. We're not materialistic. We don't care about stuff. We can, eat bread all day if we need to. However, when you look at that value and then about asking people for money to pay you, they collide.
Mm-hmm.
So I had to say, well, that value is true. I'm still not materialistic, but if other people don't pay me, number one, I cannot survive because I have bills to pay. But more importantly, are they really going to take my advice seriously? And so that's what I mean with those patterns in the back of your mind. And that goes for, why do you get married when you get married? Who do you marry and why? Why do you want to have a dog or a cat? All of those things may just be somewhere in the back of your head. And that's the second step, really, in identifying what are those. So just, throwing that in, because it's really important when we're thinking about revolutionizing. It's not just on the outside. The main stuff is on the inside. And you will have crazy days, and they're fantastic. I mean, I sometimes dance outside in the rain, and my neighbors look at me because I'm dancing with my daughter. Luckily, nowadays, they think I'm dancing with my daughter, but I do it by myself too, okay? So you need to free yourself from all of those constraints and embrace who you are. Then you perform much better because you have your own standards and nobody else's.
I love the idea of crazy days that you choose, that you want to have, that are from the joy and energy bubbling up in you. Those are much better than crazy days of overwhelm and stress and
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you just have to, what are my values? So yes, I will get the work done, but I will get it done the best way I can while still appreciating everything that I am and what really matters to me. It relieves a lot of that pressure. We're like pressure cookers in some ways.
Yes, right. And you got to open that valve or it's going to blow.
Yes. Yeah, you got to let out a little bit.
Okay, so I understand that your free gift is called Journaling for Patterns, which sounds really interesting now that I've kind of heard what your philosophy is behind it. So tell us a little more about that gift. It seems awesome.
Well, it's a starting point. I know a lot of people, when they hear journaling, they are like, oh my God, I don't like to write. Well, it's not that complicated. Really, it is the idea that let's figure out where you are right now, which areas work, which areas work great, which areas do not work so great. You identify that, and via the questions that I'm asking, you will have the ability to figure out where you are and which areas you might want to change a little bit. And most importantly, reclaim accountability and responsibility for your own life. I don't believe that we're here to be spectators. We're already watching somebody else's life. And very often when we have all those crazy days, we're spectators because we're not taking, I love the example of the horse, we're not taking the reins back. So it helps you figure some of that out in a very first and basic step so you don't have to write for hours. Ask you some specific questions. And it gives you some ideas also on how you can identify some of your values and some of your patterns so that at the end of when you have worked through that, it's a couple of sentences and for each question and for the little table. Once you have worked through that, you'll be able to at least be aware and make an informed choice of what do I want to do next? Do I want to now step into these aspects and maybe work on them a little bit? Or do I just want to say, they're there, but I'm not quite ready. I'm going to continue where I am right now. And there is no right or wrong because it all depends on where we are. So it's a little guidance on getting started.
Beautiful, beautiful. I imagine that would be great if you're looking for somebody to help you with some of this, to bring that information to that conversation would be a really valuable first step as well. Great stuff.
You could even have it, for you and your spouse or for you and your child or for you and your boss or team member, just going through that process and say, so what are yours? What are mine? So how can we get this together? Absolutely. Yes.
Mm-hmm. Well, that is delightful. Thank you so much. I really appreciate your time and your wisdom today. And the link to this wonderful gift is in the email that came that linked you, all of our viewers, to this interview. So thank you again and have a great day.
Thank you. Bye.